Surprise, 2 Downies are better than 1. Patrick Downie here as well. We're talking about Heksenketel. Maybe you guys have some questions, but we're going to hear all about Heksenketel. And thanks a lot for all the Jenny Wenjack work that you do so tirelessly as well.
Thanks, Ivor. Just want to say, where's the timer? Okay, 6:49, 6:48. Just want to say a couple things about Heksenketel. First of all, Patrick drove from Toronto to Thunder Bay to meet. We were coming across from Victoria, Vancouver, straight to Thunder Bay, and Patrick drove for 24 hours in a minivan to meet us there with extra crew and cameras and stuff. And Patrick was the best boy on Heksenketel. I don't know if you remember, you got that credit. Hello? Anyone here?
Yes, I was best boy on Heksenketel. And
Test.
there you go. I had just gotten my license, actually, Mike. I think I got my license just to make that trip. And I was mostly afraid of just falling asleep while driving.
Long drive.
But it was a long drive, and I remember at certain points I was so tired I couldn't distinguish whether I was going uphill or downhill. But it was real cool. And that was the first tour I'd ever really been a part of. And I decided on that tour that was going to be the last tour I was going to be a part of, because that's not what I'm built for. That's my story.
That's a good story, Patty. I love that. That's my brother. Lots of time. Lots of time. Best boy.
I'll talk to the guy who told me to shut up while I was talking during the listen. Maybe
We were talking.
I was talking, but people were talking to me. I was trying not to be rude, but I am sorry for interrupting your listening experience, sir.
Sounded pretty good. Sounded really good. So let me tell you a little bit about Heksenketel. It's from the '93 Roadside Attraction Tour, which was meant to be originally Heksenketel. The tour was going to be called Heksenketel, but when they got Midnight Oil involved, Peter Garrett said it smacks of the occult and thought it was kind of bad vibes. It's witch's cauldron in Dutch. So Peter said, no way. So then it changed to another roadside attraction. And then I said to Gord, well, we can just call the film Heksenketel. And I've been explaining Heksenketel for 30 years since then. It's kind of a cool name though. And it definitely kind of fit, I think. The idea of the film, this was from the very beginning, this was from Gord, was that the band and the crew, which would be the immediate crew, but also security and bus drivers and transport drivers, everybody involved, and the fans would all be on the same level. Like, it would all be one sort of stream of this is what it takes to put on a tour. And which I think was a really good idea, but very important to Gord and the band that this not be a project that's going to sort of aggrandize more than the Hip already sort of were achieving. So, okay, that's a good idea. So Gord and I were talking on the phone one night, and Gord said, I was telling him a little bit about what the cut was at and some of the performances and everything. He said, well, he was asking about a particular performance. And I think I was describing the one at Markham Fairgrounds on the huge weekend in Toronto. And I think on the Friday night, it was 35,000 fans showed up. And, on a flat field, when you put that many people, the faces, it just stretches forever. It just, from the stage looking out, you do not see the end of the crowd. It just keeps going. And then on the Saturday, I think there was even more because people were camping and more people arriving. So it's maybe 40,000 on the Saturday. So I was telling Gordon about the performance. And he said, well, and how great it was, and how intense it was, and the fans in the mosh pit, and the security, and everything else. And Gord's like, oh, that sounds pretty good. We don't look like rock stars, do we? And I'm like, well, yeah, kind of do. And he was so bummed out about that. It was so against what he stood for and what he wanted to portray. But we talked about it some more. I said, I don't know. People aren't going to think you're necessarily a rock star, but they're definitely going to realize that there's a lot of people who are dying to see you guys perform live. So, I'll tell you the idea of it. I pitched to Gord, a friend of mine, Gord McFarlane, who I worked with at CBC on a business show, came to me and said, you should definitely try to do a documentary about the Hips tour this summer. So I talked to Gord. He went and talked to the band, and they said, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. So the manager, Jake Gold and Alan Gregg, I got to have a meeting with them. And Alan Gregg said, what's the budget for the film? I said, I don't know. And then he said, where are you going to get the money? And I said, I don't know. I said, okay. Mike has no idea what he's doing. So anyway, we went to Universal Music and they gave us $17,000. So it was a lot of money back then. It wasn't enough, but it was a lot. So 35 seconds. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Had you made a documentary before, Mike?
I had not done anything before. I worked on a business show, but they would never let me produce anything. And I was a researcher, fart catcher, as we used to call ourselves. But it worked out. It worked out. I had you.
The time stop.
Right behind you.
Overtime.
Yeah,
I don't know what else to tell you about Heksenketel, It's first thing I ever did. It was a lot of fun. And, I will say this. When you see some of these performances, and in particular, the whole band, but there was something that was, I think, happening with Gord that summer, because it was Clayoquot Sound that was taking place. And Gord went into Clayoquot Sound, into the black hole with Midnight Oil, and it really energized him, and it really motivated him. And then I think the Midnight Oil influence on the Hip was so huge. They're not in the film. They weren't interested. I did film them. But I think Peter Garrett's influence on Gord was so profound, and I can tell you that you can hear Gord messaging in some of the rants that he does, in middle of song, kind of soliloquies that he does. And they're really interesting. And I have to say that, if you talk to anybody in the band or Jake, there's no question that summer, being out on the road with Peter Garrett and Midnight Oil had a huge influence on the band. And I think it had a huge influence on Gord in particular in turning, I think, his awareness towards things like the environment, but to also stand up for what you believed in. I think for the band, it wasn't really clear if they wanted to use their celebrity or their power, their rock star power, again, something they wouldn't say, but it was a decision to perhaps put some of that to use and to help raise awareness and things like that. So it really set them on a course of all sorts of really important work that they did, both in Kingston and right across the country. So that all happened, I believe, or got started in a big way that summer. So anyway, there you go. Enjoy the film. Thank you.